Welcome to the Hope Athletics Orange and Blue podcast. My name is Andy Babbitt, Sports Information Director at Hope College. It's been my privilege the past 2 years to bring you this podcast where we meet with the different people that comprise the Hope Athletics family, whether administration, coaches, student athletes, and alumni, and catch up with them and what they're doing. And it's my thrill this month of June, with the 50th anniversary of the Title IX legislation, to have with me Elly Douglass Jordan, class of '04, and former cross country and track and field runner. And Elly, welcome to the Orange and Blue podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
I thought of you. You came on campus this spring for our Hopi ceremony as our latest recipient, with the Hope for Humanity Award, which is presented to Hope College alumni athletes who have demonstrated Christian commitment and service to others in their careers at Hope. And I remember the conversations that we had, in the afternoon prior to the award ceremony, and kind of your journey both at Hope and then after you've graduated at Hope. And I couldn't help but think about Title IX and how that helped create opportunities for you to be where you are today. And I guess first, kind of a general question, when you think about Title IX, what does it mean to you personally?
Well, Title IX is such a simple piece of legislation, really, that embodies the principle that we shall not have discrimination on the basis of sex in education, which since I'm 40, it predates me about 10 years, and sort of looking at what that has meant for my life is that I think it really is emblematic of what my particular cohort kind of faced in education. So many of the women that we stand on the backs of were the people that really pioneered for us. I was rarely the first woman to do a lot of things. I know there's been a lot of women that have gone before me being the person that got all the weird looks and had to suffer all of the discrimination. And it meant that where I came into being and where I sort of fell, the path was readied for me in many, many of the places that I chose to go, whether it was law school or athletic endeavors or the courtroom. I think it was sort of in a nascent stage, though, because certainly there's been times where my gender, the ways in which my gender does not experience privilege has meant that I have felt significant discrimination. But I also acknowledge that I have had tremendous privilege in that, and I'm a white woman, and I present as straight. So those are things that have privileged me. So Title IX really has meant that I had a right, at least on paper, right, to experience an education free from discrimination on the basis of sex. And the way that Title IX has begun to fully flourish in its 50 years, and hopefully will continue to complete that promise that it puts out there, is something that has affected my life, maybe even more so because I am enthusiastically supporting those efforts to make Title IX truly mean something. I've had the great privilege to work alongside and to have friends and loved ones touched by sexual assault on campus. And for that to be something that is taken seriously, and so that we no longer have the empty seat that should be occupied by the quarter of students who experience sexual assault who end up having to leave their campuses. All of that is the kind of thing that actually gets me up in the morning. And so that has impacted me quite a bit. So I think that it's hard to, I think it would be easy for me to take for granted a lot of the promise that Title IX has fulfilled thus far, but far be it for me to set aside, to become lazy, right? To rest on my laurels and not continue to encourage that Title IX continues to fulfill its full promise.
For you, when did you realize, hey, I want to be a competitive runner? Was it in middle school or high school? And when did you realize, hey, this is something I can do, I enjoy, and I'm pretty good at, and want it to be something that, from our conversation, really running has been part of your entire
Yeah.
life?
Yeah, running, being able to have access to team sports and full access to that. Another piece of the Title IX promise that has been so meaningful to me. I think I had the privilege, as a young person, to see, as many young people do. I think I was inspired by like Florence Griffith Joyner and other amazing athletes that I saw compete in Olympic competition. And I think I had parents and a mom who really was incredibly encouraging around anything I wanted to do, but particularly around athletics and running. And so kind of very early on, I started to realize that athletics was something that not only was really fun and interesting, and perhaps I wasn't terrible at, but also that it was something that I found was really critical to helping me achieve the balance that I need to feel really good in all the things that I want to do. And so that sort of ability to get out all of the energy that builds up when you're doing cerebral things became really important to me. I think I remember very clearly watching Olympics as a pretty young child, and telling my mom that I wanted to, run. And so then we went to the park and did some races and had some fun with that. I have a real clear memory of that. But I also, throughout high school was able to do basketball and volleyball, and love those sports and those, the team community that it creates, as well as the opportunity to really help regulate all of the emotions that you experience in your daily life. It has become one of the really core things for me. And so that's I think ever since a young age, I've known I wanted to participate in that. Throughout middle and high school, I had the opportunities because of Title IX to really participate. I think cross country and track are some of the fields that were at the cutting edge of really full equality between male and female athletes as far as what was offered. It was never, there were never that many fights about different seasons. We got to be alongside our male competitors, and it didn't feel like we were sort of a special group. And then being able to, it really in high school, being mostly on a really good team, and then not being horrible on that really good team, gave me the sense that it would be really important for my emotional and physical well-being to be part of the team at Hope if I was able. And that did prove to be a community that got me through some of the hardest moments in my life, and really were, continues to be some of my closest friends.
What was it about those moments or that teamwork that helped you? And I would imagine probably there were some that you were your teammates and friends with that you gave back as much as as much as you received. Talk about that dynamic and how that helps a young woman who's growing up and figuring out what she wants to do with her life.
Oh, for sure. I think there's something, and I, with all the sports that I've participated in, the sense of doing something together, being, we're not in this alone, sets up the stage for a real opportunity to build unity and cohesion. And then with running sports in particular, especially those long runs when you're getting trained up, give you lots of chances to talk things out, right? And I actually even got to know my husband by training for a marathon. So I'm a big proponent of long runs to get to know somebody well, because it's those opportunities where you can really talk out what's troubling you, what's bothering you, and by being a person that helps get another colleague or friend through a long, hard run, you learn the skill of supporting someone through their more difficult emotional experiences. And so kind of the people that were there with me saying like, hey, no, don't give up, keep running hard, are the same people that I call when motherhood gets hard, are the same people that I call when it's just too much at work, and kind of talk them through. They're my squad. So I think you build that, you just like you flex your physical muscles in athletics, you end up flexing those emotional muscles and build the skill of being that support person to someone.
Your studies at Hope majored in social sciences. Did you know when you came here that's what you wanted to do, or how did that journey come about and help you start to probably put into focus, what you wanted to do post-graduation?
Yeah, I came into Hope pretty much centered on social work as a career. That was my mother's career, and that was what I envisioned doing. What was great about Hope is it helped sort of kindle and perfect a passion that I have for writing. And I soon realized that a career that had a lot of writing and talking would be something that would be sort of a good place for me. I didn't know coming out of Hope that I wanted to pursue the law in particular, but I did have a stronger sense that, in addition to being exactly what my mother did, I wanted to take those themes and build on what she did as a social worker and take it into perhaps a slightly more macro angle. So I still have a pretty strong heart for my social work colleagues, and I feel that I bring a lot of that in. But I've been able to bring some of the other skills that I was able to learn in my religion and international studies and political science majors into to bear in the law, and use those particularly Hope professors as a general matter don't let you slough off on good writing, and they pushed me in a way that I think I really did me a service when I got to law school.
With being an athlete, how did that help you as far as managing studies? College in particular on its own is challenging in its own right and has a lot of demands, and at times rewarding, at times exhausting. And that, how did that opportunity that you had to be a runner growing up, to be a member of the team, how did that help you navigate that and to be able to accomplish, what you wanted to accomplish each semester?
I think the two key pillars were really balance and time management. So being able to have that sort of physical outlet for the different stressors and cerebral activity you have going on was a good balance. I actually at the time, I felt like a little bit strange among my peers. I was working quite a bit too. I waited tables through Hope, and so worked quite a bit. I also worked on the grounds crew, which was a great experience and one of the most foolhardy things I ever signed on for, because I grew up on sort of the east side of the state, and so I didn't have any quite way to be prepared for the lake effect snow that was coming my way when I signed up to be on the grounds crew. But I also worked waiting tables. So sometimes that meant that the time management was really quite extreme, where I was going from maybe shoveling snow at 4:30 in the morning to practice at 7 for the early, when the track had it early practices. Hopefully, rarely did those follow on the same days, but sometimes it did, to classes all day, to practice after school, after classes, and then straight to work. And there was little time for shenanigans, let's put it that way. So I think time management became really critical. I learned while I was at Applebee's to keep things that I needed to study in my little waitress bulletin booklet so that I could pull things out and run through and try to memorize things. And, I would often burn the midnight oil as far as writing and stuff. So gave me the hard work and knowledge that I needed to have a physical outlet. I train attorneys right now on how to manage the secondary trauma that comes when you're hearing difficult client stories all the time. And one of the real pillars that's coming out of the social science on that is the need to have physical activity and hard physical activity as part of your life. And so I know when things are out of whack, when I'm not running enough, usually that's the thing that regulates me. And it gave me sort of a built-in tool and roadmap to go back to when I needed some balance in my life.
After you graduated from Hope, your first stop was in El Salvador, where you worked as a missionary with the Share Foundation. Talk about that experience, what you learned, and how, fresh out of college, how that kind of was another pillar for you.
Oh yeah, that was really the praxis of what I felt like I had picked up being at Hope. I had an opportunity. I knew that we wanted. I had married my husband just after undergrad was done, and I think it was 3 weeks later, I had my first orientation, and within a month, maybe a month and a half, we were in El Salvador, a country that we had both lived in Chile, and I had spent some time in other parts of the world, but neither of us had ever been to Central America. And so it was brand new, and really having the opportunity to be in solidarity with folks who were experiencing profound poverty and significant human rights abuses was really, it was the culmination of what I felt like I'd been working towards, and working with the Share Foundation that prioritizes accompaniment of people as opposed to sort of coming in and having a charitable model has then shaped the way that I do pretty much everything else. I seek to accompany those I serve, and it really has influenced everything else I've done.
And did that prompt you, that experience, to consider law school then, or how did the law school,
Yeah, it did.
idea come into focus?
I had an opportunity when I was at the Share Foundation to be in support of a group of people who were protesting the privatization of their water services. So they were really worried that the poor people in their community weren't going to be able to afford water. And they mounted a peaceful protest, and had been arrested and charged with terrorism. And I had this opportunity to sort of provide support from grassroots organizations in the US to write letters on their behalf. Some of these people were people that I knew as colleagues fairly well, and I knew that they had no ill intent, no terrorist, intentions. And so it was really quite frightening to see them threatened with such serious outcomes for doing what they felt was the right thing. And so I remember very clearly that we were all very concerned and stressed. And then once we were able to recruit a fairly good attorney to come in and make their case for them, a lot of my grassroots efforts, which were helpful, wouldn't have gotten the job done, and it needed an attorney, right? And sort of that in that experience, a bit of a light bulb went off, sort of that, lawyers help. A lawyer can really help, and has a tremendous ability to make change. And at the same time, my husband and I were both sort of identifying that we'd love to be in Michigan if we could. We have family that we care about deeply and want to be near, and nothing that I felt like I was prepared to do at that point, international human rights work, made a whole lot of sense in Michigan. But the work of an attorney does make sense in Michigan. There's a lot that I can do as an attorney that is human rights. It's the something I mentioned, the boring but important stuff that really impacts people's human rights, that you do as an attorney every day, whether, sometimes whether it's, something as simple as making sure that somebody has language access so that they can understand the proceedings against their perpetrator in a sexual assault trial, whether it's I'm preparing today for an asylum interview to help a person make the case that they've been persecuted and merit asylum. Those kinds of things really are human rights when the rubber meets the road. And I feel really honored to be able to do that. And it wasn't until I had a chance to sort of see a lawyer in action that I felt like I really had that sort of epiphany that this is something I could do.
You then got good experience as far as kind of all sides of the law profession with as a clerk for the U.S. Court of Appeals, and then in private practice at Warner Norcross and Judd, and then now then your work is at Michigan State's College of Law Immigration Clinic kind of came into focus. Just talk about that growth and how that prepared you for where you are today, seeing the different aspects of law and how to work best to get justice for those that you're working for.
Well, I always feel like this is, since we're talking to the Orange and Blue podcast, I kind of feel like the thing that I feel like I really have to offer in all facets of life is sort of a bit of a flexibility. And when I was on the track team, for example, I tried lots of different events. I was a middle distance runner mostly, but I could run a longer distance event. I toyed with the heptathlon a little bit. I'm pretty mediocre at a whole lot of things. And my experience as a lawyer is that I really enjoy having a foot in kind of more macro things that end up affecting systemic change. I also really enjoy representing clients. I like law that's good and complicated. So immigration law is where it's at. But I also end up learning and practicing a lot of different areas of state law, family law, different areas. And the privilege of being able to serve as a clerk on the U.S. Court of Appeals was really unmatched. I was one of the first clerks ever to come out of Michigan State to serve at the U.S. Court of Appeals level. So that was a tremendous honor and one that I always hope to live up to. And I'm indebted to Judge McKeek for giving me that chance and really enjoyed working for him. So, and every day at this point, a lot of my work centers around appellate level advocacy. And so it helps me be better for the people I serve each and every day.
And now you're with Michigan Immigrant Rights Center, and
Right.
you lead a team that provides trauma-informed legal services to refugee and immigrant children who experience, as you mentioned, unfortunately, persecution and human trafficking. I know for myself personally, as someone who would consider himself a privileged white male, it's hard for me to put myself in those children's shoes and understand how they're feeling, what they've been through, how to help them. For someone who maybe just doesn't have the ability to understand, what would you want them to kind of hopefully hear and have more empathy and in some way to be able to help those that are being mistreated and everything that unfortunately happens in the world sometimes today?
What a fantastic question. I think more than anything, just knowing that people are people. And so if you think it would be really hard for your kid to be, say, put on the top of a train and sent through several countries on the top of a freight train, and then shoved into a very packed car and maybe stacked on top of other people and below other people in a very hot van, and then brought up to a place where they don't speak the language and don't know what comes next, then it's probably hard for these kids too. And there's a deep human desire to be safe and free and able to meet your full potential. And that doesn't change when you speak a different language or have a different skin color. And if you forget that for a minute, it's real easy to dehumanize people. And dehumanization has always been the beginning of the end of anything we're ever proud of as a human race. And so when you see people in your communities, learn about them, learn about where they come from and what they're there for, and how you can be a supportive person in that community. And make sure that your heart is really open.
I know there's been, and you mentioned a few of the people along your journey that have poured their heart into you and to help you become the professional and mother and wife that you are today. Who are some of the women, there's probably a ton, maybe too many to mention in a single podcast, but can you just, in the spirit of Title IX, the celebration, who are some of the women that really inspired you and helped you as you became an adult and all the things? When you look back, who are some of the women that you're really grateful for that you had as part of your life, whether family or friends or just someone you came across working with?
Oh, the very first person that comes to mind is one of my very dearest friends. Jeanette Rupert is her name now, but she was a student at Hope with me. And she has been she's a nurse now in Minnesota, and she grew up 3 blocks away from where George Floyd was murdered. And she was able to be at that. She has been at a chaplain for the families that were affected by that event. She has been in the center of every event that has gone down for the months that have followed. And she is always, particularly because she is just a person that also brings so much joy, even in the hard times, and has the capacity for joy and frivolity at certain moments, but also brings just this sense of peace and always seems to know just the right thing to say. And I think that our connection at Hope really has always, was like forged out of that time. And watching her, even though we're contemporaries, I feel that I look up to her so much. So she's the first person that came to mind, but man, so many women and so many people have really influenced me. And I think of a lot of some of my Hope professors. Dr. Annie Dandabadi was a great professor when I was at Hope. She, definitely encouraged me along the way and helped me become who I am. There's definitely too many to mention. I think, certainly Professor Veronica Thronson, who's at Michigan State, was my supervisor for a time and continues to be one of my greatest mentors. And Professor Renee Kanaki from Michigan State, who has a fantastic book for those interested in these topics, called Shortlisted, about all the women who were shortlisted for the Supreme Court. Professor Kanaki is just Professor Jefferson is fantastic. Her name is now Renee Jefferson, and she's also a trustee at Michigan State. But she is just a superior human being and has always been able to inspire me and is kind enough to shepherd me along when I have to sort things out a little bit.
And lastly, also in the spirit of Title IX, now I know obviously we all have come from different experiences, but for a young lady or a young girl who might be just like you, was 8, 9, or 10 years old and growing up, or even a teenager, or even a student athlete coming to Hope, or even presently at Hope, what advice would you give them about making the most out of their experience and finding their path and where they can make an impact and how they can enjoy life, whether it's competitive running or studying STEM or, or law or whatever, what advice would you give to a young person that's starting their journey?
I think the thing that, I have a 9-year-old, so this is a pretty easy question for me. I think about it all the time. The thing I say that I feel is really instructive and kind of cuts to the quick of all this is make sure you do things that scare you. Do something almost every day that scares you just a little and pushes you outside your comfort zone. I remember finishing my first cross country race at Hope, and my friend sort of draped her arm around me, and she was like, "We are college athletes," and do the thing that makes you feel like, wow, that's just a little beyond the comfort zone, or that's more than I'm not sure I'm going to be able to do that well. If you only